What happens when the most feared military force in the galaxy discovers that a primitive species they've been hunting is actually the legendary Death Worlders that destroyed entire star systems? When Council Admiral Zephyx realizes his fleet just attacked Earth, home of the humans who single-handedly ended the Void War, panic doesn't even begin to describe the terror that follows. What happens when the most feared military force in the galaxy discovers that a primitive species they've been hunting is actually the legendary Death Worlders that destroyed entire star systems? When Council Admiral Zephyx realizes his fleet just attacked Earth, home of the humans who single-handedly ended the Void War, panic doesn't even begin to describe the terror that follows. Admiral Zephyx stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the orbital bombardment of the blue planet below with satisfaction. The primitive world had put up surprisingly little resistance for a species that had somehow managed to spread across several star systems. Their weapons were crude, their ships laughable by galactic standards, and their military tactics centuries behind current doctrine. "Sir, the surface bombardment is complete," reported Lieutenant Kex, his mandibles clicking with excitement. "All major population centers have been neutralized. Estimated casualties approach 6 billion. Zephyx nodded approvingly. The Third Galactic Council had been tracking these upstart humans for decades, watching them slowly expand beyond their home system with their primitive chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. When they'd finally developed faster-than-light travel, the Council had decided it was time to eliminate this potential threat before they could become a nuisance. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Signal the fleet to begin landing operations. I want full occupation of all remaining settlements within 72 hours. Zephyx's 4 eyes gleamed as he gazed at the smoking planet. "These humans will make excellent slaves once we've broken their spirit." The bridge crew of various alien species worked efficiently around him. Zephyx's mixed fleet represented the finest military minds from across the Council territories: Nexri strategists, Vorthak heavy assault troops, Zilirian tech specialists, and his own Kytherian command staff. Together, they had conquered dozens of primitive worlds for the Council's expansion. "Admiral," called out Chief Intelligence Officer Vex from her station, her tentacles dancing nervously over her control interface. "I'm receiving some unusual intelligence reports about this system." "What kind of unusual?" Zephyx's voice carried a note of irritation. "The battle was won, what could possibly be concerning about intelligence reports now?" Vex's skin color shifted to a pale yellow, a sign of anxiety among her species. "Sir, I've been cross-referencing our target data with historical archives, and there appear to be some discrepancies in our initial assessment." "Speak plainly, Officer Vex. What discrepancies?" "Well, sir, according to these records, this system, Sol System, and this planet in particular." She paused, her tentacles trembling. "Sir, I believe we may have just attacked Earth." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Zephyx felt his blood temperature drop several degrees. "That's impossible. Earth was destroyed over 2 centuries ago during the Void War." "That's what we all believed, sir. But the stellar coordinates match perfectly, and the planetary composition is identical to archived data about Earth. The third planet, the blue one we just bombarded, sir, I think that was humanity's homeworld." Lieutenant Kex looked confused. "With respect, Chief Vex, what's the significance? So what if it's Earth? The humans are clearly a primitive species. Look at their technology levels." Vex's skin turned an even paler shade of yellow. "Lieutenant, you're too young to remember the war stories." "Admiral, surely you recall the legends about the Terrans?" Zephyx's mind raced back to his military academy days, to the whispered stories that instructors would tell to frighten young cadets into taking their training seriously. Tales of a species so ruthless, so adaptable, so impossibly dangerous that they had single-handedly ended the greatest war in galactic history. But those were just stories, weren't they? "Pull up the historical files immediately," Zephyx ordered. "Everything we have on the Void War and the Terran intervention." Vex's tentacles flew across her controls. Moments later, holographic displays filled the air above her station, showing archived footage and battle reports from over 200 years ago. The images that appeared made several bridge crew members step back in alarm. Massive space battles filled the displays, not the clean, orderly engagements typical of modern warfare, but chaotic, savage conflicts where ships rammed each other and warriors fought with whatever weapons they could find. In the center of it all were vessels bearing a distinctive blue and white insignia and crewed by bipedal mammals with an unsettling resemblance to the beings they'd been fighting on the planet below. According to these records, Vex reported, her voice barely above a whisper, humanity emerged from Earth approximately 250 years ago. They were initially dismissed as primitives by all major galactic powers. The Void Empire particularly mocked them, calling them soft mammals unfit for serious warfare. The historical footage continued playing, showing the gradual escalation of the Void War. What had started as minor territorial disputes between established galactic powers had grown into an existential threat when the Void Empire began consuming entire star systems, converting all biological matter into their hive mind collective. Then, Vex continued, when the Void Empire was on the verge of total victory, when every major civilization was preparing for extinction, the humans arrived. The footage shifted to show human fleets engaging Void forces. What Zethix saw defied every principle of military doctrine he'd ever learned. Human ships fought with a savagery that was both beautiful and terrifying, using tactics that no sane species would attempt. They rammed dreadnoughts with corvettes, detonated their own ships as weapons, and fought boarding actions in the vacuum of space using nothing but primitive spacesuits and determination. The humans didn't just fight the Void Empire, Vex reported, reading from the archives. They destroyed it utterly. Not defeated, destroyed. The Void's billion-strong fleets, their planet-sized bioships, their reality-warping technology, the humans found ways to counter it all. They fought a war that lasted 30 years and ended it by detonating the Void's home dimension. Lieutenant Keck stared at the footage in disbelief. But, that's impossible. No species could survive that kind of warfare. And, if humans were that powerful, what happened to them? Why did they disappear? That's just it, Vex replied, her skin now a sickly green color. They didn't disappear. According to the final records, after the Void War ended, humanity withdrew to their home system. They demanded that all galactic powers leave them alone, and, in return, they would not interfere in galactic politics. Every major civilization agreed immediately. That was the Treaty of Soul, Zethix whispered, the pieces finally falling into place. The Forbidden System. No ship was permitted to enter Sol space under penalty of total annihilation. Yes, sir. And, over the decades, as new governments rose and fell, the true story became legend. Then, myth. Then, children's stories told to frighten young ones into behaving. Eventually, most people began to believe the humans were just a fairy tale. Zethix stared at the planet below, where his bombardment had thrown up massive dust clouds that obscured much of the surface. His four stomachs churned as the full implications hit him. Officer Vax, how many humans are we estimated to have killed in this attack? Preliminary estimates suggest approximately 6 billion, sir. The bridge fell silent again. Zethix closed his eyes, remembering more details from the ancient stories. Humans, according to legend, cared deeply about their own kind. They would pursue vengeance across galactic distances and, through centuries of time. The concept of proportional response was apparently foreign to their thinking. They believed in overwhelming retaliation. Sir, called out Communications Officer Thane, his voice shaking. I'm detecting massive electromagnetic disturbances from the planet's surface. Something is happening down there. On the main display, they could see strange lights beginning to pierce through the dust clouds covering Earth's surface. Not the random fires one would expect from a bombarded world, but organized patterns of light that pulsed with deliberate rhythm. Analysis? Zethix demanded. Unknown, sir. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. But, the power readings are significant. Very significant. Vex looked up from her station, her tentacles now motionless with terror. Admiral, I'm reading something else from the archives. According to the deepest classified files, there were always rumors that the humans who fought in the Void War weren't just warriors, they were the human military's defensive forces. Their exploration and colonization fleets were supposedly still out there, somewhere in deep space, with technology far beyond what they'd used against the Void Empire. That's impossible, Lieutenant Kex protested. Our intelligence reports show they're primitives. Look at their technology, chemical rockets, basic nuclear weapons, simple computer systems. What if, Zethix said slowly, a horrible realization dawning on him, what if what we observed wasn't their real technology? What if we've been watching a species that deliberately appeared primitive while hiding their true capabilities? The lights on Earth's surface were growing brighter and more organized. Geometric patterns were emerging from the chaos, visible even from orbit. It looked almost like Sir, those patterns, Thane reported. They're not random. They're forming symbols. Letters. It says. He paused, his vocal cords trembling. It says you made a mistake. Alarm klaxons suddenly began blaring throughout the ship. Tactical Officer Zarin's voice cut through the noise. Admiral. Massive energy spike detected on the planet's surface. Multiple launch signatures. Evasive action. Zephyx shouted. All ships, emergency scatter pattern. But it was too late. Whatever was launching from Earth's surface was moving faster than anything in their weapons databases. The first impact struck the outer perimeter ships of Zephyx's fleet, and the results were unlike anything he'd ever seen. The vessels didn't just explode, they seemed to fold in on themselves before vanishing entirely from sensors. Impossible, breathed Tactical Officer Zarin. Those projectiles are moving at near light speed. No species has that technology. More launches followed from Earth's surface. Dozens, then hundreds of whatever humanity was firing at them. Ships throughout Zephyx's fleet began disappearing from sensors. Not destroyed, simply gone, as if they had never existed. Admiral, Vex called out, her voice hollow with despair. I'm detecting additional energy signatures from deep space. Multiple contacts approaching at impossible velocities. The main display shifted to show long-range sensors. At the edge of detection range, massive objects were approaching Sol system. Ships, but not like any vessels in known databases. They were huge, some appeared to be the size of small moons, and they were moving faster than physics should have allowed. How many ships? Zephyx asked, though he dreaded the answer. Sensors are having difficulty getting accurate counts, sir. The ships appear to be using some form of stealth technology that interferes with our detection systems. Conservative estimate, several thousand vessels. Several thousand ships, each larger than his flagship, approaching at impossible speeds. Zephyx realized with crystal clarity that his career, his fleet, and, quite possibly his species' future had just taken a very dark turn. Sir, Thane reported from communications, I'm receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's directed specifically at you, Admiral Zephyx. Play it. A new voice filled the bridge, calm, controlled, and speaking perfect galactic standard despite allegedly being from a primitive species. The accent was unfamiliar, but there was something in the tone that made Zephyx's scales crawl. Admiral Zephyx of the 3rd Galactic Council Fleet. This is Commander Sarah Chun of Earth Defense Command. You have committed an act of unprovoked aggression against the sovereign territory of humanity, resulting in the deaths of approximately 6 billion civilians. Under the laws of war as established by the Treaty of Sol, you and your forces are now designated as enemy combatants. The transmission paused. Zephyx could hear what sounded like other voices in the background, speaking rapidly in an unknown language. Admiral, you should know that humanity has been monitoring galactic civilization's development for the past 2 centuries. We are aware of your species, your tactics, and your military capabilities. We are also aware that your government has apparently forgotten why the Sol system was declared off-limits. Another pause. The lights on Earth's surface were now forming new patterns, what looked like targeting matrices centered on each ship in his fleet. You attacked Earth, Admiral. You killed our children. You destroyed our cities. You broke a treaty that has kept peace in this galaxy for over 200 years. The human fleet currently approaching your position has been authorized to respond with extreme prejudice. Zephyx found his voice. This is Admiral Zephyx. We were not aware of Earth's protected status. Our intelligence indicated this was an uncontacted primitive world. We are prepared to negotiate a ceasefire and discuss reparations for any misunderstanding. Silence stretched for long moments. Then, the human voice returned, and Zephyx could swear he heard amusement in it. Admiral, did you just claim that killing 6 billion humans was a misunderstanding? We. Zephyx's usual diplomatic skills seemed to have abandoned him entirely. Admiral, let me be very clear about humanity's position. You declared war on Earth. You opened hostilities against a species that has spent the last 2 centuries developing technology you can't even imagine. You attacked the homeworld of the race that destroyed the Void Empire. The lights on Earth's surface suddenly shifted into a new configuration. Where before they had spelled out messages, now they formed a single image visible from space, the distinctive emblem that had appeared on human ships during the Void War. The skull and crossed swords that had become the symbol of unstoppable vengeance throughout the galaxy. Admiral, you should also know that the 6 billion civilians you killed were not humanity's total population. Earth is home to approximately 8 billion humans. The other 2 billion currently reside in our orbital cities, our lunar colonies, our asteroid mining facilities, and our deep space exploration vessels. They are all very much alive, and they are all very unhappy about what you've done to their home. Zethix felt his knees go weak. If this voice was telling the truth, if humans really had survived his bombardment in such numbers, if they really possessed the technology his sensors were detecting. The human fleet will arrive at your position in approximately 6 hours, Admiral. I strongly suggest you use that time to contemplate the magnitude of your species' error. Transmission ended. The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly frantic beeping of alarm systems. More ships from Zethix's fleet were vanishing from sensors as Earth's defensive systems continued their impossible attacks. The massive objects approaching from deep space were resolving into clearer images, revealing ships that defied every principle of aerospace engineering his species had developed. Lieutenant Kex looked up from his station, his mandibles chattering with fear. Admiral, what are your orders? Zethix stared at the planet below, where billions of humans were presumably planning their revenge. He thought about the stories from his childhood, the legends of a species so dangerous that the galaxy's greatest powers had agreed to leave them alone rather than risk provoking them. Stories he had dismissed as myths. Stories that were apparently true. Send a message to Council Command, he said quietly. Tell them we have made contact with humanity. Tell them. He paused, watching another of his ships disappear from sensors. Tell them to prepare for war. 3 hours had passed since Commander Chen's transmission, and Admiral Zethix's remaining fleet hung in increasingly desperate formation around Earth. What had begun as a force of 300 ships had been reduced to fewer than 200, as Earth's surface defenses continued their methodical elimination of Council vessels. Zethix stood in his ready room, surrounded by holographic displays showing everything the Council's databases contained about humanity. The files made for disturbing reading, but what troubled him more was how little information there actually was. For a species that had supposedly saved galactic civilization, humanity's historical record was surprisingly sparse. Sir, came Vex's voice over the intercom. Council Command is requesting an immediate briefing on our situation. Zethix activated the quantum communication array, and, moments later the bridge of his flagship was filled with holograms of the Council's highest-ranking officials. Supreme Commander Ralthos of the Nexary dominated the center of the display, his reptilian features twisted with displeasure. Admiral Zethix, your preliminary report makes no sense. You claim to have attacked Earth and provoked humanity into mobilizing a war fleet. Humanity is extinct, Admiral. They have been for over 2 centuries. With respect, Supreme Commander, I am transmitting all available evidence that contradicts that assessment. Zethix gestured to Vex, who began uploading sensor readings, communication intercepts, and battle footage to the Council's networks. Commander Thale of the Vorthak Heavy Fleet studied the data with her multiple eyes. These energy signatures are impossible, Admiral. No known technology can accelerate projectiles to these velocities while maintaining targeting accuracy. That is what I initially believed as well, Commander. However, Chief Intelligence Officer Vex has uncovered historical records that suggest we may have severely underestimated humanity's capabilities. Vex stepped forward, her tentacles manipulating holographic controls to bring up archived footage from the Void War. Supreme Commander, with your permission, I would like to present our findings about humanity's true military history. Proceed, but make it quick. We have an entire sector to govern, not just your local crisis. The holographic displays filled with images from over 200 years ago, scenes of devastation that made the current situation look almost peaceful. Massive bioships the size of planets consuming entire star systems, fleets of millions of vessels locked in combat across light years of space, and, at the center of it all, human ships fighting with a ferocity that defied comprehension. The Void War lasted 30 standard years, Vex reported. At its peak, the Void Empire controlled over 60% of known space and was consuming inhabited worlds at a rate of 1 per day. Every major galactic power had been defeated or absorbed. Total galactic extinction was estimated to be only months away. Supreme Commander Ralthos shifted uncomfortably. Yes, we all know the historical accounts. The Void Empire was defeated by a combined effort of the remaining galactic powers. That is incorrect, Supreme Commander. The Void Empire was defeated exclusively by humanity. Every other galactic power had either been destroyed or was in full retreat when humans arrived in the war zone. The footage shifted to show human fleets engaging void forces. What Zethix saw still made no tactical sense. Human ships were smaller and, apparently less advanced than their enemies, but they fought with strategies that bordered on insanity. Ships would sacrifice themselves to destroy single void vessels, crews would board enemy ships knowing they had no way to return, and human commanders would order attacks that should have resulted in total annihilation. Look at their tactics, Vex continued. Humans didn't fight to win battles, they fought to inflict maximum damage regardless of cost. They turned every engagement into a test of will, and, apparently, no species in galactic history had stronger will than humanity. The holographic records showed the gradual progression of the war. Human technology improved at an impossible rate, as if they were learning and adapting faster than should have been biologically possible. Within 5 years, human ships were matching void capabilities. Within 10 years, they were exceeding them. Most concerning, Vex reported, is the evidence that humans were fighting with only a fraction of their total population. According to these records, Earth itself was never directly threatened during the war. The humans who destroyed the Void Empire were apparently volunteers from their military services. Admiral Kreenex of the Zilirian Technical Corps studied the data with growing alarm. These weapons signatures. Officer Vex, some of these energy readings are beyond our current capabilities. How could a species develop such technology in only decades of warfare? That question concerned our analysts as well, Admiral Kreenex. According to the deepest archives, human military advancement during the Void War was attributed to something they called wartime innovation. Apparently, humans become significantly more inventive when their survival is threatened. The footage continued, showing the final phases of the Void War. Human fleets had grown from desperate defenders to unstoppable attackers, pushing deep into Void territory and systematically destroying bioships that had previously been considered invincible. The war ended when humanity located the Void Empire's home dimension, Vex reported. Rather than negotiating a surrender or establishing terms for coexistence, humans detonated something they called a dimensional disruptor and collapsed the entire Void reality matrix. They destroyed an entire dimension? Commander Thale asked, her voice barely audible. Completely. According to the records, over 3 trillion Void entities were eliminated instantaneously. The human commander's report simply stated, threat neutralized. Returning home. Supreme Commander Ralphos studied the data in silence for several moments. Officer Vex, what happened to humanity after the war? They withdrew to Earth and demanded that all galactic powers sign the Treaty of Soul. The terms were simple: no galactic government would interfere with human space, and, in return, humans would not participate in galactic politics. Every major power agreed immediately. And they just disappeared? Not disappeared, Supreme Commander. They were simply left alone, as they requested. Over time, as governments changed and new species achieved spaceflight, the true story of the Void War became legend. Most current military academies teach that the Void Empire was defeated by a coalition of galactic powers, with humans mentioned only as minor contributors. Zethix stepped forward. Supreme Commander, I believe humanity deliberately allowed their reputation to fade. They wanted to be forgotten, to be left in peace. But they never actually became less dangerous. Admiral, that's speculation. With respect, sir, it's speculation supported by current evidence. Humanity's technology appears to have advanced significantly since the Void War. The weapons they're using against our fleet exceed anything in our databases. Their ships approaching from deep space are larger and more sophisticated than anything the Void Empire ever deployed. The communication array crackled with static as another Council ship disappeared from sensors. The holographic displays updated to show the approaching human fleet, now close enough for detailed scans. Admiral Kreenex studied the sensor readings with growing horror. These ship designs, they're completely alien. Not alien as in non-human, but alien as in based on scientific principles we don't recognize. Look at these power signatures, they're generating more energy than some of our space stations. How many ships are we facing? Supreme Commander Ralphos demanded. Vex manipulated her controls, trying to get accurate counts. Sensors are still being interfered with, Supreme Commander, but conservative estimates suggest approximately 4,000 vessels. 4,000? Admiral Zefix, your fleet consists of fewer than 200 ships remaining. Even if the humans are using obsolete technology, those numbers. Supreme Commander, I don't believe humanity is using obsolete technology. I believe they've been advancing their military capabilities for 2 centuries while the galaxy forgot they existed. The main display suddenly activated, showing a new transmission from Earth's surface. Commander Chen appeared again, but this time she was standing in what looked like a military command center filled with technology that none of the Council observers recognized. Admiral Zefix, I hope you've had time to review humanity's historical records. Since you're still in our space, I assume you've decided to wait for our fleet to arrive rather than attempting to retreat. Commander Chen, I have been in communication with Council leadership. We are prepared to offer full reparations for the damage caused to Earth and to establish new diplomatic relations between our species. Admiral, you seem to be under the impression that this is a diplomatic situation. You attacked our homeworld. You killed our civilians. You broke a treaty that has kept the peace for over 200 years. This is not a diplomatic situation, this is a war. Supreme Commander Ralphos stepped forward. Commander Chen, I am Supreme Commander Ralphos of the Third Galactic Council. I take full responsibility for the actions of Admiral Zefix's fleet. We are prepared to offer any reasonable compensation for the damage caused by this unfortunate misunderstanding. Chen's expression didn't change. Supreme Commander, there are approximately 6 billion human civilians dead on the planet below us. What reasonable compensation did you have in mind for genocide? Commander, surely there must be some form of resolution that doesn't involve military action. The galactic economy depends on peaceful coexistence between species. Supreme Commander, let me ask you a question. If an alien species attacked your homeworld and killed 6 billion of your people, would you consider it a matter for the galactic economy? Ralphos fell silent. Around him, the other council leaders exchanged worried glances. Chen continued, humanity withdrew from galactic politics centuries ago because we found it tiresome and inefficient. We established the Treaty of Soul because we wanted to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. That treaty has now been broken. Commander, what are humanity's terms for re-establishing peace? There are no terms, Supreme Commander. You declared war on Earth. We are responding accordingly. The transmission shifted to show external views of Earth's surface. Where before there had been destruction and fires from the orbital bombardment, now there were massive structures rising from the ground. They looked like weapons emplacements, but their scale was staggering, some appeared to be kilometers in diameter. Admiral Zefix, you should know that your attack on Earth was remarkably ineffective. While you did cause significant damage to our surface cities, approximately 2 billion humans were protected in our underground facilities. Our industrial capacity was largely undamaged, and our military infrastructure was specifically designed to survive much worse attacks than yours. More images flashed across the display, underground cities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, manufacturing facilities that churned out weapons and ships at impossible rates, and training centers where humans prepared for combat with an intensity that made Zefix's scales crawl. You see, Admiral, humanity learned valuable lessons from the Void War. We learned that peaceful species get exterminated by aggressive ones. We learned that isolation only works if you're prepared to defend it absolutely. And we learned that when someone threatens Earth, the appropriate response is overwhelming retaliation. The display showed the approaching human fleet in greater detail. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time, combining flowing organic curves with geometric weapon arrays. They moved through space with a grace that suggested technology far beyond current Council capabilities. The human fleet approaching your position represents approximately 1/10 of our current military capacity. Earth Defense Command maintains fleets throughout the galaxy, Admiral. We've been watching. We've been learning. And we've been preparing for the day when someone would be foolish enough to threaten our home. Commander, Zefix said desperately, surely human civilization values mercy and restraint. The Council fleet is clearly outmatched. We surrender unconditionally. Admiral, you seem to have confused humanity with some other species. We don't value mercy for those who attack our families. We don't practice restraint against those who commit genocide. And we certainly don't accept surrender from those who broke the peace we've maintained for 2 centuries. The communication channel filled with new voices speaking in rapid human languages. Chen listened for a moment, then turned back to face the council leaders. Gentlemen, you have approximately 3 hours before our fleet arrives. I suggest you use that time to say goodbye to your crews and prepare final messages for your families. The human fleet has been authorized to eliminate all council forces in Sol system without exception. Commander, please Admiral, you attacked Earth. Everything that happens next is the result of that single decision. Chen paused, and, for the first time, her expression showed emotion, cold, implacable anger that made Zephix's blood freeze. You should have remembered the stories your grandparents told. You should have left humanity alone. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, Supreme Commander Ralphos stared at the tactical displays showing the approaching human fleet. 4,000 ships that appeared to outgun anything the Council had ever built, crewed by a species that had once destroyed an entire dimension rather than accept defeat. Admiral Zephix, Ralphos said quietly, how many Council citizens are there in our space? Approximately 40 million across our core systems, Supreme Commander. And how many humans are there? Vex consulted her data files. Based on the information we've gathered, approximately 8 billion on Earth alone. Unknown populations in their space colonies and deep space fleets. Ralphos closed his multiple eyes. Admiral, we may have just provoked a war with a species that outnumbers us 50 to 1 and possesses technology we can't comprehend. Yes, Supreme Commander. I believe that is an accurate assessment. And they show no interest in negotiation or mercy. None, Supreme Commander. Ralphos looked around at his fellow council leaders, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. Then, may the ancestors help us all. Admiral Zephix had ordered his remaining fleet into defensive formation around Earth, hoping that some show of tactical competence might convince the approaching humans to allow a negotiated surrender. It was a desperate plan, but, after watching his ships disappear one by one to Earth's surface defenses, desperation seemed like the only option left. That was 2 hours ago. Now he was beginning to understand that humanity had very different ideas about what constituted warfare. Admiral, reported Tactical Officer Zarin, his voice strained with exhaustion, we've lost contact with the destroyer squadron assigned to Grid 77 Alpha. Their transponder signals just stopped. Zephix studied the tactical display with growing unease. The destroyer squadron had been positioned at what should have been a safe distance from Earth's surface weapons, well beyond the range that those impossible projectiles should have been able to reach. Their disappearance made no tactical sense. Any debris? Energy signatures? Anything to indicate what happened to them? Nothing, sir. One moment they were reporting normal status, the next moment they were simply gone from our sensors. Lieutenant Kex looked up from his station, mandibles clicking nervously. Admiral, that's the 4th squadron to disappear in the past hour. Always the same pattern, no distress calls, no weapon signatures, just gone. Sir, interrupted Chief Vex from her intelligence station, I'm detecting some unusual electromagnetic patterns from the asteroid belt at the edge of this system. Might be related to our missing ships. Show me. The main display shifted to long-range sensors focused on the outer system. What they showed made several bridge crew members step back in alarm. The asteroid belt around Sol's outer planets was moving. Not drifting in normal orbital patterns, but actively repositioning itself as if the rocks themselves were alive. Enhanced scan, Zephix ordered. The display zoomed in, revealing the truth behind the moving asteroids. They weren't asteroids at all, they were ships. Hundreds of human vessels, each one perfectly camouflaged to look like space debris, had been hiding throughout the system. Some were the size of small moons, others no larger than fighters, but all of them were now moving with deliberate purpose toward his fleet. Impossible, breathed Communications Officer Thane. Our sensors should have detected artificial constructs of that size. Unless, Vex said quietly, their stealth technology is far more advanced than we believed possible. Zephix watched the approaching ships with a mixture of professional admiration and growing terror. The tactical implications were staggering. If humanity could hide entire fleets in plain sight, if they could eliminate Council ships without leaving any trace, then this wasn't a battle, it was a hunt. And his forces were the prey. All ships, emergency recall to close formation, he ordered. Maximum defensive posture. I want our point defense systems online and overlapping fields of fire. The surviving ships of his fleet pulled into tight formation around his flagship. 163 vessels, representing the finest military technology the Council had ever produced, arranging themselves like frightened animals huddling together for warmth. Sir, Zarin reported, the human ships aren't approaching in standard attack formation. They're surrounding us. Zethix could see it on the tactical display. The camouflaged human ships were moving to establish a sphere around his fleet, but they weren't moving like military vessels. They moved like predators circling wounded prey, taking their time, savoring the moment before the kill. Distance to closest human vessel? Approximately 50,000 kilometers and, closing slowly, sir. 50,000 kilometers, well within weapons range for both fleets, but the humans seemed to be in no hurry to open fire. They were simply watching. Waiting. Admiral, came a new voice from the communications array. Not Commander Chen this time, but someone else entirely. The accent was different, the tone more casual, almost conversational. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the stealth cruiser Phantom. I hope you don't mind the dramatic reveal. We thought you might appreciate seeing our camouflage technology in action. Zethix found his voice. Captain Webb, I am Admiral Zethix of the 3rd Galactic Council Fleet. We are prepared to discuss terms for the immediate cessation of hostilities. Oh, Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Hostilities haven't begun yet. What you've experienced so far has been our defensive systems conducting standard target practice. Target practice? Well, yes. Earth's surface batteries needed to test their accuracy against moving targets, and your ships were convenient. I hope you don't mind, we'll be sure to factor the ammunition costs into our final bill. The casual tone was somehow more disturbing than Commander Chen's cold professionalism. This human was discussing the destruction of Council ships as if it were routine maintenance. Captain, my fleet is prepared to surrender unconditionally. We acknowledge humanity's superior position and request safe passage to return to Council space. Admiral, I'm afraid you're still not understanding the situation. You attacked Earth. You killed our people. From humanity's perspective, you declared total war against our species. Surrender isn't really an option at this point. Then, what do you want? What we want, Admiral, is for you to understand what it means to fight humanity. Your species appears to have forgotten the lessons that other galactic powers learned during the Void War. We thought a practical demonstration might be educational. The tactical display suddenly showed new contacts appearing throughout the system. Not the large fleet that had been approaching from deep space, but smaller vessels materializing seemingly from nowhere. They appeared inside asteroid fields, emerging from behind planets, and rising from what had looked like empty space. Admiral, Vex reported, her tentacles trembling, I'm detecting human ships throughout the entire Sol system. Hundreds of them. Possibly thousands. They appear to have been hiding everywhere. How is that possible? Our sensors swept this system thoroughly before the invasion. Captain Webb's voice carried a note of amusement. Admiral, one of the first things humanity learned during the Void War was that visible fleets get destroyed. We developed rather sophisticated stealth technology out of necessity. Would you like a demonstration? Before Zethix could respond, his sensors suddenly showed that his own flagship was surrounded by human ships at distances of less than a kilometer. Small, sleek vessels that had apparently been shadowing his fleet without being detected. These are what we call shadow fighters, Webb explained. They've been following your ships since you entered our space. Their mission was reconnaissance, but I'm afraid their secondary role is close-range termination of enemy vessels. You've had weapons platforms within striking distance of my flagship for hours? Oh, much longer than that, Admiral. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered this galactic sector. Did you really think humanity wouldn't notice a 300-ship invasion force heading toward Earth? Zethix felt his knees go weak. If the humans had been tracking his fleet from the beginning, if they had known about the attack in advance. Captain, are you saying humanity allowed us to attack Earth? Admiral, Earth's planetary defense grid could have destroyed your entire fleet before you achieved orbit. We chose to allow your bombardment to proceed because humanity needed to see exactly how far the Council was prepared to go in violating the Treaty of Sol. The implications hit Zethix like a physical blow. You used your own population as bait. We used our surface cities as bait, Admiral. Cities that had been evacuated weeks ago when our long-range sensors detected your approach. The casualties you believed you inflicted were mostly automated systems and defensive installations designed to look like civilian targets. But Commander Chen said 6 billion humans were killed. Commander Chen was referring to our artificial intelligence population, Admiral. Earth is home to approximately 6 billion AI entities that manage our civilian infrastructure. Destroying them was certainly inconvenient, but hardly the genocide you believed you were committing. Zethix stared at the tactical display in horror. Humanity had orchestrated the entire situation. They had allowed the attack to proceed, had sacrificed their artificial population to create justification for whatever they planned to do next. What about the real human population? Safe in our orbital habitats and underground cities, Admiral. Though I must say, they're quite upset about the damage to their homes. Humans tend to be sentimental about Earth. Admiral, Zarin interrupted urgently, the approaching human fleet is dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Estimated arrival in 30 minutes. Zethix looked at the long-range sensors and felt his heart stop. The human fleet materializing at the edge of the system was massive beyond comprehension. Ships the size of small planets, accompanied by swarms of smaller vessels that numbered in the tens of thousands. Captain Webb, surely this level of force is unnecessary. My fleet poses no real threat to humanity. Admiral, you're absolutely correct. Your fleet poses no threat to humanity. But, you're not just fighting Earth Defense Command, you're fighting the human Stellar Navy. What's the difference? Earth Defense Command protects our home system, Admiral. The Stellar Navy protects human interests throughout the galaxy. The fleet approaching your position has been stationed in deep space for the past century, maintaining humanity's territorial claims. Territorial claims? Humanity hasn't expanded beyond this system. Hasn't expanded visibly, Admiral. We found during the Void War that claiming territory openly just makes you a target. It's much more effective to simply occupy space quietly and let other species assume it's empty. Zethix thought about the implications of that statement. How much space does humanity actually control? That's classified information, Admiral. But I can tell you that human territory is extensive. Sir, Vex called out from her station, I'm analyzing the approaching fleet's configuration. Admiral, these aren't just warships. I'm detecting what appear to be construction vessels, colony ships, industrial platforms. It's not a military fleet, it's an entire civilization. Captain Webb, is humanity planning to relocate to Council space? Oh, Admiral, you're thinking too small. After you attacked Earth, humanity's civilian leadership held an emergency session to discuss our response. The consensus was that the Treaty of Seoul has been irreparably violated and that humanity can no longer rely on isolation for security. What does that mean? It means, Admiral, that humanity is resuming our expansion into galactic space. Your attack has convinced us that leaving other species to govern themselves was a mistake. We tried isolation, but, apparently, the galaxy needs more direct supervision. The tactical display updated to show the human fleet's true size as it dropped into normal space. Over 10,000 vessels, ranging from fighters to ships that dwarfed anything in galactic history. And, at the center of the formation, a single massive vessel that defied description. Admiral, Webb's voice continued, you're looking at the HSN Retribution, humanity's new flagship. She's approximately the size of your moon and carries a crew of 15 million humans. Her mission is to serve as the mobile capital of humanity's new galactic administration. Galactic administration? Yes, Admiral. Since the Council has demonstrated that it cannot be trusted to maintain peaceful relations with humanity, we've decided to replace it. The galaxy will now be administered directly by human authority. Zethix stared at the impossible ship on his display. 50 million humans aboard a single vessel, armed with technology that made his entire fleet look primitive by comparison. Captain, the Galactic Council represents over 400 species across thousands of systems. You can't simply take over the galaxy. Admiral, how many species did the Void Empire represent before we destroyed them? Zethix fell silent. The Void Empire had controlled thousands of species across millions of worlds, and humanity had eliminated them all in 30 years of warfare. Sir, Thane called from communications, I'm receiving a transmission from the human flagship. It's directed to all Council forces. Play it. A new human voice filled the bridge, older and more formal than the others they had heard. Attention, vessels of the Third Galactic Council. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez, Supreme Commander of Human Stellar Forces. You are hereby ordered to surrender all weapons and prepare for boarding. Resistance will be met with immediate destruction. This is Admiral Zethix. Admiral Vasquez, I formally request a meeting between senior commanders to discuss terms. Admiral Zethix, there are no terms. You attacked Earth. You declared war on humanity. The only discussion available to you is whether you wish to die fighting or die in custody. Admiral, surely Admiral Zethix, let me be clear about your situation. You are surrounded by human forces with technology centuries beyond your own. Your ships are outnumbered 50-1. Your weapons cannot penetrate our defenses, and your communication systems are completely compromised. You have no tactical options remaining except surrender. Zethix looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Fear, despair, and growing acceptance of their fate. He had led them into a war they could not win against an enemy they had not understood. What happens to my crew if we surrender? Your crews will be transported to detention facilities where they will be treated according to human standards for prisoners of war. Your ships will be impounded and studied. Your governments will be contacted and informed that the Galaxy Council is hereby dissolved. And the Council species will be incorporated into humanity's new galactic administration. Don't worry, Admiral, we've had 2 centuries to study galactic politics. We think we can do a better job than you have. Zethix closed his eyes. The legends his grandparents had told him about humanity were all true. Worse than true, they were understated. Admiral Vasquez, I surrender my fleet unconditionally. Thank you, Admiral. Please power down all weapons and prepare for boarding. And, Admiral? Yes? Welcome to the human galaxy. Admiral Zethix sat in the detention cell aboard the human flagship Retribution, staring through the transparent aluminum window at a view that defied his understanding of physics. The cell wasn't uncomfortable. Humans apparently believed in treating prisoners well, but the psychological impact of seeing the galaxy's new reality was devastating. Through his window, he could see the remains of his fleet. Human boarding parties had taken control of every council ship within hours, disabling their weapons and communication systems with an efficiency that spoke of extensive preparation. But what truly disturbed him was how those same ships were now being systematically dismantled and studied by human engineering teams. Admiral, came a familiar voice. He turned to see Commander Chen entering the detention area, though she now wore the uniform of the human Stellar Navy rather than Earth Defense Command. Commander Chen. I trust you're here to gloat about humanity's victory. Actually, Admiral, I'm here because Admiral Vasquez thought you might want to understand what's happening to the galaxy while you've been in custody. Chen activated a holographic projector, filling the cell with images that made Zethix's 4 stomachs clench. Star charts showing human fleets throughout Council space, industrial reports detailing the construction of massive human installations, and casualty reports from species that had attempted to resist humanity's expansion. This is the situation as of 6 standard days after your surrender, Chen explained. Human forces have occupied the capital systems of all major Council species. Resistance has been minimal. How is that possible? The Council controls thousands of systems across dozens of sectors. Controlled, Admiral. Past tense. And the answer is simple: humanity has been preparing for this war for 2 centuries. The holographic display shifted to show detailed intelligence files on every major Council species. Military capabilities, industrial capacities, political structures, even psychological profiles of key leaders. The depth of information was staggering. You've been spying on the entire galaxy? Admiral, after the Void War, humanity learned that isolation only works if you understand everything that's happening around you. We've had intelligence operatives in every major government for over a century. We knew about your invasion plans before your own fleet commanders did. Chen manipulated the projector controls, showing footage of human fleets emerging from deep space throughout Council territory. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields, camouflaged as space debris, or simply lurking in the void between stars. Everywhere the Council had believed space to be empty, humans had been watching and waiting. The Nexuri homeworld surrendered after we demonstrated that their planetary defense grid had been compromised for 50 years, Chen continued. The Vortak Heavy Fleet attempted a counterattack and discovered that their ammunition supplies had been replaced with inert materials. The Zilurian Technical Corps tried to activate their most advanced weapons and found that humanity had been controlling their computer systems since they were first installed. Impossible. Council security protocols were designed to stop known threats, Admiral. Humanity represents an unknown threat. Our technology, our methods, our entire approach to warfare evolved independently from galactic civilization. Your security systems were never designed to stop us because you forgot we existed. Zethix studied the intelligence reports with growing horror. Every council strength had been neutralized, every defensive system compromised, every strategic advantage eliminated before the war had even begun. How long have you been planning this? Planning is the wrong word, Admiral. We've been preparing for this possibility since the Treaty of Seoul was signed. Humanity learned during the Void War that peaceful coexistence requires overwhelming strength. We withdrew from galactic politics not because we were weak, but because we were too dangerous to participate safely. And our attack on Earth gave you the excuse you needed. Our attack on Earth proved that the galaxy could not be trusted to leave humanity alone. Your species broke a treaty that had kept the peace for over 2 centuries. What did you think would happen? Chen activated new displays showing the current state of former Council territory. Human industrial facilities were being constructed throughout conquered space, massive shipyards that would dwarf anything the galaxy had ever seen. But, more disturbing were the relocation centers where entire populations were being moved to accommodate humanity's expansion. Where are you taking them? Reservation worlds, Admiral. Carefully selected systems where Council species can maintain their cultures under human supervision. Think of them as protected territories. You're turning the entire galaxy into a prison. We're turning the entire galaxy into a stable civilization, Admiral. 2 centuries of Council governance produced constant wars, economic exploitation, and, now attempted genocide. Humanity has decided that other species require more direct guidance. Zethix looked at the casualty reports scrolling past in the holographic display. The numbers were surprisingly low for such a massive military operation, but the implications were terrifying. Humanity had conquered the galaxy with minimal bloodshed because resistance had been futile from the beginning. What about species that refused to accept human authority? Chen's expression didn't change, but Zethix caught something cold in her eyes. Admiral, there are no species that refuse to accept human authority. Some initially attempted resistance, but, when faced with the alternative, they all chose cooperation. What alternative? Extinction, Admiral. Humanity learned during the Void War that some problems can only be solved through complete elimination. We prefer cooperation, but we're prepared for alternatives. The holographic display showed footage from the Kephrite system, where a species known for its military prowess had attempted to organize resistance against human expansion. What remained was an empty star system with no planets, no moons, and no trace that civilization had ever existed there. You destroyed an entire species? We eliminated a threat to galactic stability, Admiral. The Kephrites chose war over peace. Humanity responded appropriately. Zethix stared at the empty space where the Kephrite system had once existed. A species that had existed for millions of years, wiped out in hours because they had refused to surrender to human authority. How many others? The Kepphrites were the only species that chose extinction over cooperation, Admiral. Their fate served as an effective demonstration to other potential resistance movements. Chen manipulated the controls again, showing the current deployment of human forces throughout the galaxy. Massive fleets patrolling former Council space, construction projects that would remake entire sectors, and administrative centers where human officials were establishing new governmental structures. What's humanity's long-term plan for the galaxy? Peace, Admiral. Permanent, enforced peace. No more wars between species. No more exploitation of weaker civilizations. No more threats to humanity's security. Under human domination. Under human guidance, Admiral. We've studied your species' histories, your cultures, your technologies. Most galactic species are not psychologically suited for self-governance on an interstellar scale. You require structure, direction, and protection from your own aggressive impulses. Zethix thought about humanity's history as he understood it. A species that had fought the most savage war in galactic history, that had destroyed entire dimensions rather than accept defeat, that had conquered the galaxy in less than a week. And they believed other species were too aggressive for self-governance. Admiral, Chen continued, humanity spent 2 centuries trying to ignore galactic politics. We wanted to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. But your attack on Earth proved that isolation is not sufficient protection. If humanity is to survive, we must control our environment completely. And if your control leads to rebellion? Then, we'll deal with rebellion the same way we've dealt with every other threat to human security, Admiral. Overwhelming force applied without hesitation or mercy. The holographic display showed the construction projects underway throughout human space. Industrial facilities that would outproduce anything the galaxy had ever seen, research stations where human scientists were developing technologies beyond current comprehension, and training centers where new generations of human soldiers were preparing for whatever challenges might emerge. Admiral, humanity has no interest in ruling other species for personal gain. We're not interested in exploitation or domination for its own sake. But we are absolutely committed to ensuring that nothing like the Void War ever happens again. And if that requires controlling the entire galaxy? Then, we'll control the entire galaxy, Admiral. Permanently. Chen deactivated the holographic projector and prepared to leave. Admiral, you should know that the other species are adapting well to human administration. Crime rates are down, economic productivity is up, and there have been no wars since our expansion began. Most citizens of former Council space report being happier and more secure under human governance. And those who don't report being happier are free to relocate to the reservation worlds where they can maintain their traditional lifestyles without interfering with galactic stability. Under human supervision. Under human protection, Admiral. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Humanity has learned to navigate those dangers successfully. Other species require guidance. Chen reached the door, then turned back. Admiral, your crew is being released tomorrow. They'll be transported to the Kytherian reservation world where they can rejoin their families and live in peace. They're good soldiers who followed orders from incompetent leadership. Humanity holds no grudge against them. And me? You, Admiral, will remain here as our guest. Your knowledge of Council military doctrine and strategy will be valuable as humanity establishes its new governmental structures. Consider yourself a military advisor to the new galactic administration. A prisoner. A consultant, Admiral. With excellent benefits and accommodations far superior to any Council detention facility. Chen left, and Zephyx returned to staring out his window at the transformed galaxy. Human ships moved through space with the confidence of absolute dominance, constructing installations and patrolling trade routes with mechanical efficiency. In the distance, he could see Earth itself, slowly recovering from the bombardment his fleet had delivered. Human engineering teams were rebuilding the damaged cities, but with modifications that suggested they had learned from the attack. The new structures were larger, more heavily defended, and designed to house populations far beyond Earth's current needs. Humanity was expanding not just across the galaxy, but preparing for challenges that hadn't yet emerged. They were thinking in terms of centuries and millennia, planning for threats that might not appear for generations. And, at the center of it all was the simple truth that Zephyx had been too blind to see: humanity had never stopped being the most dangerous species in the galaxy. They had simply chosen to hide their true nature until someone was foolish enough to threaten them. The Treaty of Soul hadn't been humanity asking for peace. It had been humanity offering other species one chance to coexist safely with the galaxy's apex predators. That chance was now over. Through his window, Zephyx watched human ships departing for distant stars, carrying administrators and soldiers to establish humanity's new galactic order. Each ship represented thousands of humans with the training, technology, and absolute conviction necessary to reshape entire civilizations. The galaxy had made its choice when it forgot to fear humanity. Now humanity was making its choice in response. And Admiral Zephyx was beginning to understand that this new human galaxy would be far more peaceful than the old Council territories. It would be peaceful because humanity would tolerate no alternative. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human dominion had begun. 5 years had passed since Admiral Zephyx's fleet had made the catastrophic mistake of attacking Earth. Now he stood on the observation deck of the human administrative station Terra Nova, watching the daily operations of humanity's new galactic government with a mixture of professional admiration and personal despair. The galaxy had changed beyond recognition. Where once there had been the chaotic territories of the Third Galactic Council, with their constant border disputes and economic wars, there was now a single unified civilization spanning thousands of star systems. Human administrators governed with an efficiency that made the old council look like children playing at politics. "Admiral," came a familiar voice behind him. Zethix turned to see Commander Chen approaching, though her rank insignia now indicated promotion to Admiral in the Human Colonial Authority. "Admiral Chen. I assume you're here with another progress report on humanity's civilizing mission?" "Actually, Admiral, I'm here to offer you a choice." Chen activated a holographic projector, displaying current galactic statistics. The numbers told a story that Zethix had been watching unfold for 5 years with growing amazement. Crime rates had dropped by 90% across all inhabited systems. Economic productivity was up 300%. Scientific advancement was occurring at rates that would have been considered impossible under Council governance. "These are the results of 5 years of human administration," Chen explained. "No wars, no famines, no exploitation of weaker species. Every inhabited world now has access to advanced medical care, education, and technology. The galaxy has never been more peaceful or prosperous. Under human control. Under human guidance, Admiral. And that guidance is about to become even more comprehensive." Chen manipulated the display to show new construction projects throughout human space. Massive installations unlike anything Zethix had seen before, ships the size of planets, and industrial complexes that span entire star systems. "What are those?" "Phase 2 of humanity's galactic administration program, Admiral. For the past 5 years, we've been focused on establishing stability and demonstrating the benefits of human governance. Now we're ready to implement permanent solutions to the problems that have plagued galactic civilization." The display zoomed in on one of the massive construction projects. It appeared to be some kind of space station, but its scale was beyond comprehension. Hundreds of kilometers in diameter, surrounded by fleets that numbered in the millions of ships. "Admiral, you're looking at Nexus Prime, humanity's new galactic capital. It will serve as the administrative center for the entire galaxy, with facilities to house representatives from every species under human protection." "Protection?" "Admiral, 5 years ago the galaxy was divided into hundreds of competing governments, each pursuing its own interests at the expense of others. Wars were constant, resources were wasted on military expenditures, and weaker species lived in constant fear of stronger neighbors." The holographic display shifted to show comparative data from before and after humanity's expansion. The contrast was stark. The old galaxy had been a collection of armed camps consuming vast resources for mutual destruction, while the human galaxy was a unified civilization focused on growth and development. Now, Chen continued, every species in the galaxy enjoys the protection of human military forces. No one fears invasion, no one worries about economic exploitation, and no one questions whether their children will have opportunities for advancement. Because no one has any choice in their own governance. Because everyone benefits from competent governance, Admiral. Tell me, in the 5 years since humanity assumed administration of galactic affairs, have you observed any decrease in quality of life for non-human species? Zethix had to admit that he hadn't. If anything, the species under human administration seemed healthier, more prosperous, and more secure than they had ever been under Council governance. But the price of that prosperity was absolute submission to human authority. What about freedom, Admiral Chen? What about self-determination? Admiral, freedom to destroy themselves and others is not something humanity considers valuable. Self-determination that leads to war and suffering is not something humanity will permit. Chen activated new displays showing the reservation worlds where species could maintain their traditional cultures. What Zethix saw surprised him. These weren't the prison camps he had expected, but thriving communities where non-human species lived according to their own customs while benefiting from human technology and protection. Every species has the right to preserve its culture and traditions, Admiral. But no species has the right to threaten the security and prosperity of the galaxy as a whole. And humanity decides what constitutes a threat. Admiral, humanity has proven its ability to make those decisions wisely. Look at the results. The holographic display showed news feeds from throughout human space. Children of dozens of species attending integrated schools, scientific researchers from multiple cultures working together on projects that benefited everyone, and trade networks that brought prosperity to even the most remote worlds. Admiral Zefix, I mentioned that I was here to offer you a choice. The human administration is preparing to enter Phase 3 of our galactic governance program, which is permanent integration, Admiral. Over the next 10 years, humanity will be implementing biological and technological modifications that will ensure the long-term stability of galactic civilization. Chen's words sent a chill through Zefix's nervous system. What kind of modifications? Nothing harmful, Admiral. Simple genetic adjustments that will reduce aggressive impulses in all sapient species. Neural implants that will enhance learning and communication abilities. Technological integration that will allow all species to benefit from human advances in science and medicine. You're talking about changing the fundamental nature of every species in the galaxy. We're talking about optimizing every species for peaceful coexistence and maximum potential, Admiral. The galaxy's future depends on eliminating the biological and cultural factors that lead to conflict. The display showed research facilities where human scientists were developing these modifications. The technology appeared incredibly advanced, but the implications were terrifying. Humanity wasn't content with governing other species, they intended to remake them entirely. Admiral, this is where your choice comes in. Humanity needs administrators who understand the old ways of thinking, who can help ease the transition for species that might resist optimization. We're offering you a position as Director of Integration for the former Council territories. You want me to help you lobotomize the galaxy. We want you to help us perfect the galaxy, Admiral. You understand military thinking, strategic planning, and the mindset that leads to conflict. That knowledge would be invaluable in designing integration programs that preserve what's best about each species while eliminating what's dangerous. Zefix stared at the holographic displays showing humanity's vision of the galactic future. Every species working together in perfect harmony, their aggressive instincts eliminated, their potential maximized through human technology. It would be a peaceful galaxy, a prosperous galaxy, a galaxy where no one suffered from war or want. It would also be a galaxy where humanity was the only species with free will. What happens if I refuse? Then, you continue as our honored guest, Admiral. Your knowledge and insights remain valuable to us whether you choose to participate actively or not. But, your species, your former colleagues, and your family would benefit significantly from having someone they trust helping to guide the integration process. And, if I accept? Then, you become part of humanity's greatest achievement, Admiral. The creation of a galactic civilization that will endure for millennia without war, suffering, or conflict. Chen deactivated the holographic projector and prepared to leave. You don't need to decide immediately, Admiral. But, I should mention that the integration process will begin with or without your assistance. The question is whether you want to help ensure it proceeds smoothly for everyone involved. After Chen left, Zefix returned to staring out the observation window at the transformed galaxy. Human ships moved through space with absolute confidence, their crews secure in the knowledge that they faced no threats, no challenges, no opposition anywhere in known space. In the distance, he could see one of the massive integration facilities under construction. When complete, it would be capable of processing millions of individuals per day, upgrading their genetics and installing the neural implants that would make them perfect citizens of humanity's galactic empire. Zefix thought about his own species, currently living on their reservation world under human protection. They were safe, fed, housed, and cared for better than they had ever been under council governance. Their children attended schools where they learned human science alongside their traditional culture. Their artists created works that were appreciated throughout human space. Their scholars contributed to research that benefited everyone. But they were no longer free. And, soon, if humanity's plan proceeded, they wouldn't even remember what freedom had felt like. The galaxy was entering a new age of peace and prosperity that would last forever because humanity had the power and determination to enforce it permanently. Every threat to stability would be eliminated, every source of conflict removed, every possibility of war prevented through careful biological and technological control. Zefix realized that he was witnessing the ultimate expression of human nature. Not their capacity for violence, though that remained absolute, but their refusal to accept imperfect solutions. Humanity had tried isolation and found it inadequate. They had tried limited intervention and found it insufficient. Now they were implementing total control because nothing less would guarantee the permanent peace they deemed necessary. The galaxy would be perfect under human administration. Every species would achieve its maximum potential under human guidance. Every individual would live a life free from fear, want, or suffering under human protection. And humanity would bear the burden of being the only species in the galaxy capable of independent thought and moral choice. As Zethix watched the integration facilities taking shape among the stars, he began to understand that humanity's victory was also their curse. They had become responsible for every life in the galaxy, every decision that affected trillions of beings, every choice that would shape the future of galactic civilization. They had made themselves the eternal guardians of a galaxy full of children. The observation window's reflection showed his own face staring back at him. Admiral Zethix, former commander of the Third Galactic Council Fleet, now the last witness to the galaxy as it had been before humanity emerged from their self-imposed exile. Tomorrow, he would give Admiral Chen his answer. He would accept the position of Integration Director and help humanity implement their perfect solution to the problem of galactic governance. Not because he believed in their vision, but because someone who remembered the old galaxy should be involved in creating the new one. Someone should remember what the galaxy had lost, even if everyone else would be content with what humanity had given them in return. Outside the window, the last independent starship in the galaxy changed course to dock with Terra Nova, carrying dignitaries from the final holdout species that had agreed to join humanity's galactic administration. Soon there would be no more free peoples in the galaxy. But there would be peace. Perfect, eternal, enforced peace. And humanity would make sure it lasted forever. The age of human dominion was complete. The age of human responsibility had begun. Admiral Zethix closed his eyes and tried to remember what freedom had felt like, knowing that soon no one in the galaxy would need to remember such a dangerous and chaotic concept. Humanity had won more completely than any species in galactic history. The galaxy was theirs. Forever.